All right, Jimmy Ott and Paul Stone, College Sports Rush YouTube channel. It's brought to you by Bet Rivers. Thursday is our best bets. Let's get right to them in a pivotal game in the American. Probably the odds-on favorite to be the G6 rep into the college football playoff. The South Florida Bulls playing the Navy Middies. South Florida 10 and 64 and a half. These two teams are 7 and 2, but not the same against the spread. Now we don't count VMI, but 1 and 7 ATS for the Navy midshipmen. Florida, again, top rated G6 team. They're in the rankings this week at number 24. They've got some quality wins against Boise and Florida. Florida at the Swamp. And boy, that quarterback loves some contact. Paul, you're looking at the Bulls here, minus the 10.
Yeah, I tell you, at 7-2, South Florida, number 24 in this week's college football playoff rankings, Jimmy. They're in the driver's seat to win the group of 5, group of 6 spot in the college football 12-team playoff. To ensure its inclusion, South Florida obviously going to have to win out. That would mean their remaining 3 regular season games and then winning the American Conference Championship game. Probably the toughest of the 3 remaining regular season games will be this trip to Navy this weekend to play the midshipmen. Blake Harvath and the Navy midshipmen, pretty game opponent, started the season at 7-0, albeit against a extremely weak schedule, and that might be putting it kindly. Navy has lost its last 2 games to North Texas and Notre Dame by a combined 80-27 margin. In those games, gave up a total of 926 yards total, 7.3 yards per play. So they've got a big challenge facing this South Florida offense led by quarterback Byron Brown. You know, South Florida, you hear often people saying, you know, they've got more to play for and this, that, and the other. But sometimes, you know, the burden can be a heavy burden to bear when you're the team expected to win and you're playing for, you know, something bigger out there. And to quote our friend, and we often do quote our friend Bill Shakespeare, heavy is the head that wears the crown. And I think this applies to South Florida. Again, the burden of expectations, wearing the bullseye on your back each week as teams try to knock you off that playoff perch, so to speak. So they'll be gunned for. But like you said, this is a South Florida team. I've thought all along they were the best team in this group of 6 field. Even after the defeat at Memphis, they start the season, as you mentioned, with the home victory as a small home dog over Boise State. Then they go to Florida, upset the Gators in week 2. So really got out of the gate strong. And Byron Brown, I mean, he's the guy. He's been healthy, and that's been critical to the Bulls' success. Last year, injured after 5 games, missed the remainder of the 2024 season. So great to have him healthy. And at 6'3", 231 pounds, Brown definitely packs a punch. Leads the team, of course, in passing with 2,203 passing yards. He's rushed for another 705 yards. I just think Navy's going to have trouble slowing down Byron Brown and the Bulls. I think USF's going to win this by 2 touchdowns or more. Now give me South Florida minus 10 over Navy on Saturday.
Oh, Billy Shakespeare, make sure to tell him hello when you go to Athens this weekend between the hedges. He's the guy with the bulldog painted on his bald head. So, what Athens, great place. You're going to love it. Log into your Bet Rivers app each week to opt into a 3-pack of NCAA football profit boost, including a live boost, a same game parlay boost, and a boost to use however you please. See the app or website for more details. All right, let's get to the Big Ten here. And we talked about it a little bit on Tuesday, talking about Penn State in the effort that they gave. Because, man, we're mid-November, and Penn State is still looking for their first Power 4 win of the season. We heavily criticized that non-conference schedule, and rightfully so. But still, now they left it all on the field. They were so close. Who knew that the defensive back who was trying to push the receiver out of bounds actually aided the Indiana receiver by keeping that foot from landing out of bounds before he could get that 1 foot in. Nonetheless, tremendous effort. And it takes a lot for Penn State to get up and provide that type of effort. I do grant that the quarterback made some strides, big strides. But is it an outlier for Penn State? Now they have to get back up and travel to East Lansing to take on Michigan State. Alessio Milivojevic, 3 backdoor covers, a late drive against Nebraska, a late drive for a field goal against Indiana, and a late drive for a touchdown against Michigan, all to cover the spread in that backdoor. And then he got a start. They covered again. They lose in overtime in Minneapolis St. Paul against the the Gophers, but he averaged 11.1 yards an attempt. Double digits is really good. Over 11 yards an attempt, 311 yards. Hayden Childs had no games like this. He threw for a touchdown and no interception. So it wasn't on him that they lost in Minnesota. They coming off of a bye against an emotionally drained Penn State here, catching 7.5 at home. Give me Sparty here against the Nittany Lions, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly difficult to find disagreement with fading Penn State in the midst of a 6-game losing streak and just that crushing defeat last week at home in the game against number 2 Indiana. I mean, they felt like they, had the victory, and then the Hoosiers come down, score the touchdown, maybe the catch of the year there. So, just the way this season has transpired, as you mentioned, the 6 straight defeats starting the year. Number 2 in the nation. They've lost their head coach, James Franklin, their quarterback, Drew Aller, along the way. It's just been such a difficult season for Penn State. And you would have to think that they kind of emptied their tank, so to speak, last week against Indiana, and not going to have a whole lot left in that emotional tank, so to speak. Michigan State, obviously not a great football team, but as you mentioned, the quarterback who's come in has played well. You have to wonder a little bit maybe about Michigan State. They got placed on 3 years probation yesterday, but the way that these players are so fluid, they probably none of them will even be around next year. So maybe it doesn't really have too great of an impact. But I'm with you here. I mean, it's just hard to think Penn State's going to bring much to the table as far as their collective team psyche this weekend.
Well, if they get placed on 3 years probation, the way the NCAA's enforcement is going, I guess they'll give Jonathan Smith a lifetime contract at Michigan State. So the NCAA, I mean, it is just fight it, Michigan State. I don't know, man. The NCAA weaker than ever in their enforcements. Players who place a qualifying same-game parlay of at least $10 on eligible NFL or NCAA football games will receive one standard entry into the weekly Squares game. Winning standard Squares will be awarded a prize of a $20 bonus bet. See the app and website for more details. Paul, let's get back to one of your picks here, and let's go to the American again. And East Carolina, 2.5, 58.5 at home against Memphis. I think that might be a high total, not so much for these teams. And if you look, and when you're looking at totals, you're looking at, pace of play. Nobody has more snaps per game in college football Division I than the East Carolina Pirates, right at 81 snaps a game. And that's interesting because last year they fired their coach, and the interim, Blake Harrell, came in and went 5-1. So they ripped the interim off. He's the head coach this year, and he was a defensive coordinator. Usually those defensive coaches want you to slow it down. They don't want their defense on the field for that many snaps for that game or for the season. We'll get to some of the theory about Ohio State's trying to shorten their games, thinking they're going to have a deep run into the postseason as well. But you're looking at the home standing Pirates here. Short number, under a field goal at home against Memphis. Memphis fell behind 38-17, scored 15 unanswered to make it 38-32, and got the ball 2 more times on that Friday night game against Tulane. But an interception and a turnover of downs ended that comeback effort against the Tulane Greenies. Again, East Carolina -2.5. Here's the pick.
Yeah, great piece of information there, Jimmy, that you passed on. The fact that a defensive coordinator who becomes a head coach, he's defensive minded. He doesn't want everybody having 80 plays a game. So great piece of information. He doesn't want that defense on the field that much. This time last week when we recorded, Memphis was the favorite to be the group of 6 representative in the college football playoff. 1 week later, after being upset at home by Tulane, Memphis can almost certainly kiss those dreams goodbye. So I see this weekend's trip to Greenville, North Carolina, as just being a very difficult spot for the Tigers to recoup and reload. I mean, they had to be tasting it. They had to be thinking about it. And now it's just been swept out from underneath their feet, and it's not on the table anymore. And then from Memphis's perspective, to muddy the waters even further and complicate matters even more, their head coach, Ryan Silverfield, I mean, clearly being courted by Power Four teams, some in Arkansas reporting that he's the top candidate to succeed fired Sam Pittman, who was let go around midseason there at Arkansas. Some saying that Silverfield is the favorite to succeed Pittman. And then you also have Auburn reportedly showing interest in Silverfield. So wherever he is next year, I get the feeling Ryan Silverfield is not going to be in Memphis in the Bluff City. I think he knows it. I think the players know it.
Yeah.
And now they're not playing for the field, playing for the possibility of being in the playoff. Meanwhile, you got an East Carolina team that's gotten off to a nice 6-3 start. They lost early games to Power Four teams, NC State and BYU. Don't really have a signature win. You mentioned their fast pace of play, 81 plays a game, more than any team at the FBS level this year. They are engineered by their quarterback, Caton Hauser, a Michigan State transfer, done a really good job, thrown for 2,469 yards, completed 66.5% of his throws for almost 8 yards per attempt. So really good quarterback play there. The Pirates, they don't really have a signature win this season. I think that's going to change this weekend in Greenville. I think East Carolina is the more motivated team, the more focused team. I think they beat a Memphis team that just saw their playoff hopes go down the drain by 3 or more. Give me East Carolina -2.5.
And I'm not trying to slight Memphis, but their two biggest wins of the year, both at home against Arkansas and South Florida. And man, things fell for them late. We all know about the the fumble by Arkansas inside the 5. They basically have an extra point at the end to win it. And then South Florida, they had to scramble back. Now, look, they won it. There's no doubt, fair and square, but they were this close and they were both at home. So, I mean, it's interesting. And it has to be some. It has to be some distractions as well. And the funny because they fell behind big early to Tulane. They just kind of they weren't prepared. Maybe they saw Tulane get handled in their last game of Texas San Antonio. That last impression didn't exactly fire them up. First motivational goal of a coach: get your team to respect their opponent. Let's move to the SEC. And Paul, I gotta admit guilt here, or you tell me, am I being a little bit hypocritical or contradictory? I guess I could say. Missouri -7, 51.5 at home against Mississippi State. So I'm not going to kill Missouri for getting run over by that A&M train. They fell behind. Zollers didn't handle it as well. It was a critical defensive score that he was a part of with lack of ball security that led to it. And then when they're trying to get back into the game, a perfectly timed trick play, a fake punt that just deflated any type of motivation or momentum, rather, that Missouri had going for them. But I am going to kill Mississippi State the way they looked against Georgia. Well, hear me out, because I'm wondering if that state defense is just wearing down a little bit. Georgia, for the entire season high, 567 total yards. Georgia, season high, 303 yards rushing by Georgia against Mississippi State. Mississippi State took the opening kickoff, went down the field 7-0, and then the roof caved in for them. The last 2 touchdowns were cosmetic late. Sophomore running back, a kid from Mississippi, Elma, Mississippi, and that is Ahmad Hardy, number 1 rusher in the SEC. He's the only rusher right now with over 1,000 yards, 6.1 yards a carry, and that should relieve the pressure against for the freshman quarterback Zollers in this win. So matchup here, I just think this is we all love when you just hand the ball off and move the ball down the field. It's a lot less risky to do so. But the matchup here to run the football effectively against Mississippi State, a weak rush defense and an ailing rush defense, and to relieve some of that pressure for the true freshman quarterback. Drinkowitz is a name that's being mentioned for some jobs as well. So even being in the SEC, I'm taking Mizzou at home -7.
Yeah, I think it's a good point about Ahmad Hardy, who had a huge year last year as a true freshman at Louisiana Monroe. Transfers to Missouri. Has had over 1,000-yard season already there for the Tigers. I think it's fair to point out that a lot of his yards came early against overmatched non-conference opponents, and he has had difficulty and it's offensive line related too, getting those yards against the better SEC rush defenses. But Mississippi State's not one of those. So I think you're good in your analysis of the game in expecting Hardy to have a big game on the ground. I was surprised last night to see Bo Prabula listed as doubtful on the availability report. I think Drinkwitz is probably just using a little gamesmanship. I don't think he's going to play.
Right.
But I was surprised to even see him listed. I figured he would be listed as out. He's probably just trying to give Mississippi State something else to think about. So, I think we're going to see a better performance from true freshman Matt Zollers. Obviously, Texas A&M is a tough defense. That's a tough nut to crack for a true freshman quarterback. Threw for like 75 yards or whatever last week, 3.5 yards an attempt or so. And I think he's going to find the going much easier against Mississippi State. He certainly has shown some flashes. You can tell he's got the possibility to be a starting quarterback in the SEC. But, to see them only favored by 7 against this Mississippi State team, as you mentioned, might be running out of gas and getting a little bit tired on defense. I think some good value there.
That is fair, to say the least. So the 4 non-conference games for Missouri, Central Arkansas, Louisiana, who is not nearly as good as they've been on defense recently. And I watched that UMass team last night. I mean, and then the toughest team they played was Kansas. Kansas is not exactly known for their defense. So fair point. But I just think that this might be what the doctor ordered for Mr. Hardy in this one, in that matchup there. All right, let's move to yours. And boy, I was with some in Tuscaloosa last week with some Southern Miss fans, and they are excited about first-year coach Charles Huff. Bit of a head scratcher when he went from a team that was just a better team, better program in Marshall to Southern Miss. He took a lot of players with him. Maybe I was premature because I took them into points in that opener in Starkville against Mississippi State. They came up just short. They had a chance to backdoor cover, could not score on that last drive. But the first-year coach in Hattiesburg is getting better and better. They're 4-65.5 at home in Hattiesburg against Texas State. Again, we talked about Huff, 7-2 this year, 5-0. And on top, the only undefeated team in the Sun Belt Western Division. Texas State is 0-5 Sun Belt. Wait a minute. This deep in the season, we got a 5-0 team in the conference against an 0-5 team in the conference at home, only laying 4. I'll explain. I mean, does it seem too good to be true?
Yeah, I tell you, Southern Miss laying 4 at home basically infers that these teams will be pick 'em on a neutral field, a 5-0 team versus an 0-5 team. So that's an incredible situation there. Point spread information. You look at this Southern Miss team last year, they endured a 1-11 campaign. Their only victory over FCS Southeastern Louisiana. In their 11 games last year against FBS opponents, the Golden Eagles outscored by a margin of 443 to 148. They were clearly one of the worst teams in the entire FBS structure. They actually fired their head coach at midseason last season, their former head coach, Will Hall. At the conclusion of last season, they end up hiring Charlie Huff, as you mentioned, away from Marshall. Huff, a former Nick Saban assistant coach there at Alabama, who coached the running backs for the Crimson Tide at one point in time. And, of course, he, in today's age of the transfer portal, brought about 20 of his better players from Marshall to Southern Miss. And that's certainly been part of the program's transformation, most notably the play of their quarterback, Braylon Braxton. Braxton's a guy who began his career in Tulsa, played 3 years at Tulsa, actually didn't play a whole lot, started a portion of one season, transferred before the 2024 season, played last year at Marshall, now this year at Southern Miss. And I think he's clearly met expectations, if not exceeded them, as the Golden Eagles signal caller. He's thrown for 2,187 yards, completed 67% of his throws, a little over 8 yards per attempt. So he's been really good in the passing game. You mentioned Southern Miss's 7-2 season record, and more importantly, their 5-0 record in the conference play to lead the West Division. And they're on track if they can win their last few games here, starting with Texas State on Saturday. They're on track to play James Madison potentially in the Sun Belt Championship game. James Madison, a team that still has legitimate 12-team playoff aspirations as the group of six entry there. You look at Texas State, on the other hand, it has been a frustrating season for their head coach, G.J. Kinney and the Bobcats. They won 7 regular season games and a bowl in each of the previous 2 seasons. And now this year they sit 3-6, 0-5 in conference play. They're on a 5-game losing streak. Those conference losses, the 0-5, of those 5 losses, though, 3 of them by 3 points or fewer, and a 4th in overtime by 7 points. So they have been really close, just hadn't been able to get it done. They also, important to note, will have 6 players suspended for Saturday's game against Southern Miss. There was a post-game fight or scuffle between players from Texas State and Louisiana at the end of last Saturday's game there in Lafayette. So they have 6 players suspended. 3 of those guys either start or figure prominently on their defense. So it will have an impact, I think, on their defensive play. I think Southern Miss, they're a team that has gotten to the window, gotten their backers to the window quite often this season. I think they're going to do it once again. I like Southern Miss -4 over Texas State.
Southern Miss has been down for so long. It's like as if the odds makers are still trying to catch up with their improved form. SOUTHERN, Southern Mississippi, USM. If you see Paul Stone cheering at while watching the Bama game on a TV at a Georgia tailgate, you'll know why. So Southern Miss, and I would also advise, Paul, you tell me if I'm wrong, because of all these reasons. I mean, in the information that's coming out, not everybody realized that about their little scuffle with the Raging Cajuns at the end of the game and losing three of their main players. I just think if you're going to get on this, I can only see this line creeping up. I mean, I don't know. Do you?
Yeah, I can't imagine it going down. I mean,
Yeah.
clearly and I'm not saying it's going to be just a huge impact, but it's certainly you're going to have players who are, used to playing maybe 15 snaps on defense a game that might be asked to play, 50 or whatever or more. So the shuffling around of players and the lesser talented players is going to impact their play. So I think it only will, as people get a little bit late to the party and then enter the betting market, I think this number is only apt to go up. I can't imagine it going down.
And this time of the season, you think who's a little bit more excited when they wake up and go to practice between Southern Miss, like exceeding expectations, and Texas State falling so far below, like you talked about, going to the bowl games. And it has been their defense. They don't need any players out on their defense. This is the last pick of the week on the Best Bets segment this Thursday. And let's go to the Big Ten. It's a Friday game, and Oregon and Minnesota. So Oregon, here's their November 5 Saturday schedule. So they got a bye to start off with before their trip to Iowa City. You saw what happened there. They needed everything they could. A low percentage throw and catch, but they got it. Give them credit. Good throw, good catch, clutch time, clutch kick in some tough conditions in Iowa City to turn a loss into a win and get out of there alive some kind of way. Then they play Minnesota on this Friday night. The week before, the Trojans, USC, comes to town to Autzen Stadium. And then they followed that up the next week with their rivalry game in Seattle against Washington. This is a clear dip, a lull spot in this November schedule to try and finish off this playoff appearance run by the Oregon Ducks and Dan Lanning. And they're itching to get back in there where they were just housed in the Rose Bowl by Ohio State. And here's Minnesota, plus 25.5. They're probably going to, if they lose this one, win their next two, which they should. It's an 8-14 for PJ Fleck. And it's just kind of a disinterested. I could see Oregon come in less than enthusiastic in this spot, and it's a classic sandwich spot between Iowa and USC. I remember that game too, and I know there were some rain conditions, but Wisconsin, as bad as they've been this year, I mean, they hung around and clearly covered a similar number. So 25.5 against a much more capable team. Minnesota, yes, they were destroyed in Iowa. You look at the box score in that one, everything went wrong for the Gophers in that one. Iowa won by like 40. It didn't even have 275 yards of offense. I think it's a tough situational handicap here, taking the Gophers plus 25.5 Friday night at Eugene.
Yeah, I mean, this is just such a big number. Minnesota, obviously, even though the record is good, they maybe hadn't played or they haven't played quite up to maybe the standard of some of PJ Fleck's recent teams. They've been hampered by the absence of their top offensive player, running back Darius Taylor, who's been slowed by hamstring issues, which can be really difficult to shake. He's missed the last two games. Have to anticipate that he won't play against Oregon, but they have been getting pretty good production from the backups in the run game. So I don't think that's going to be a huge issue. But man, it's got to be Minnesota or nothing when you're talking about 25 and a half points. Oregon off that emotional victory, 18-16 at Iowa. Got a big home game on deck, as you mentioned, against Southern Cal, and then Washington after that. So it just shapes up just beautifully for somewhat of an exhale on the part of the Ducks. You don't come into all these games, these 12 regular season games, and then in these subsequent games, you don't give equal effort, equal focus in all 12, 13, 14, 15 of those games. Some games you have more hands on deck, more emotional collective team psyche. Other games you have less, and this certainly figures to be one where you have less. And I can even see coaches aren't going to get too haphazard. They're going to keep their regulars in for longer than most fans think they should. But I could see Dan Lanning maybe resting some of the starters, maybe one series earlier than normal. And when you're talking about getting 25 and a half points, I mean, Oregon could be leading by 31 after three quarters. Minnesota scores a fourth quarter touchdown with 5 minutes to go against the backups, gets beat by 24. So the back door certainly could be open in this one. Got to be Minnesota or nothing.
Maybe we can get one of those Washington State Ole Miss type of situations where the Cougars certainly hung around much closer than the final score. Paul, enjoy your trip to Athens for the Texas Georgia game. Athens is a great place for a game day, for just in period. It's an awesome place, awesome trip, maybe the best layout for a college town that there is around, and also a great spot for a great atmosphere for a college football game. You're gonna love it. And so tell my man Paul Stone hello. Be friendly to him over there between the hedges in his trip for the Texas Georgia game. We'll see you next week right here on the College Sports Rush YouTube channel, brought to you by Bet Rivers.